So, my subscribers, I have a really special treat for you. I don't know how many of you have asked the question about Eddie and his mom, whose name is Pat. You didn't know that. These two wonderful people back in 1986 did this interview with me. And what they said back on that day and how they interacted with each other touches many of you. So, after a lot of effort, I got them both. So, Pat, let me start with a really important question. Why are you wearing dark glasses?
I wear dark glasses a lot. The light does bother my eyes, but I think I look rather cool.
So, Pat, um, I think you do too. In fact, back in the old days, a lot of people comment on your good looks. Did you see yourself as good looking back then? Did you know you were good looking? How did you see yourself?
I didn't think that I was good looking. I thought I was a very plain person, uh, a Maine girl, didn't wear makeup, and so I didn't feel that I was good looking. No.
Did you think she was good looking back then? Did you see your mom as a good looking woman?
Well, I mean, as far as a young kid could think that, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, yeah, she was my mother. Since I was a little kid, I always looked up to her. I thought she was beautiful my whole life.
You mentioned in the video that your son is a good looking boy. If he dressed differently, the girls would like him.
Well, I think he is nice looking, not just because he's my son, but he's nice looking. And I believe that the girls would be more attracted to him if he changed the way he dressed.
Do you think he's still a good looking boy? And did he end up dressing differently or did he keep on wearing those clothes?
I think my son has always been handsome, and he still is handsome, and he still basically wears the same clothes, but maybe not as ratty looking as they used to be.
When you look at the old video, which I asked you to do, what do you think when you're looking back then? What do you sense from it? What do you feel from it? Because very few people get the chance to look at themselves 35 years ago.
35 years ago, I was very concerned about where my son was headed, and I knew that he was a very bright boy. Uh, he was bored with certain things in life, such as school, but he's extremely smart. But I was really concerned about with the music where it may lead him. So I didn't encourage him. Eddie has a beautiful voice, and I just felt that he was going in the wrong direction and that his music, because of his voice, would have taken him somewhere else. And I wouldn't have had to worry about him so much, get him involved in things I felt were not going to be good for him.
You got something to say?
She kind of was right because her concern was legitimate. Um, I did go I did go down pretty dark path for a few years of my life. I didn't get it at the time. She understood. I just wanted to play, heavy metal and hang out with my friends and, create music, just like I explained in the video before. I mean, that's how I really felt at the time. But there was an element to that whole time period and what I was doing that I didn't see that was leading me to, I don't want to use a strong word like destruction, but it was pretty self-destructive. And not because of the music itself. It was destructive because of my attitude that was the result of indulging in it to the level that I did. There's nothing wrong with heavy metal. This is, as far as I'm concerned, even today, being 50 years old, I view it in the same exact way as I did back then, as far as a listener goes, and as far as a creative, someone who uses it, to be creative and views it as an art form, which it is. But there's an element to that lifestyle for a 16-year-old who is unequipped with the weight of some of what that music represents. Luckily for me, I came out of it. I realized, like I brought this up to you before, my foundation of my spiritual relationship that I had was based on my mother, and she gave me that, and that helped me through the dark times of my life. That kind of led me to be able to see the light, I guess, in a way.
What I found interesting about the comments is how many people agreed with Eddie when they were young. They really understood heavy metal, which I didn't at the time, as a kind of a breakout, as a way to be yourself in a world that was kind of positioning you to be somebody you weren't. That's what he was and the other band members was saying back then. Was that true? I mean, it seems to me that it was, that Eddie was being highly creative in a world that you and I, Pat, did not understand at all. The music made no sense to us, but it made sense as a rebellious act. Is that correct?
David, I feel that back then, Eddie needed something. It was more or less searching for something, and heavy metal was something that he related to. It was exciting. The one thing about Eddie, he might have been rebellious, but he was never, ever disrespectful to me. And but I think that he was searching for something that would be good in his life, his own personal feelings and excitement. And I think we all search for something that is exciting to us, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's heavy metal, whether it's any form of music, actually. If you like music, and we've come from a very musical family, that this seemed to be exciting to Eddie. This was something that at that time fulfilled what he needed.
She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. And it's kind of strange actually hearing her say it, because I think she always felt it. That and that aspect of it was the very reason that was the one thing that made us not connect back then that we do connect with now. There's an understanding about that now that there wasn't back then. Back then, I didn't know she felt that way. So my rite of passage, more or less, that I was going through, which was heavy metal. She's right. I was searching for something that was my own thing, that was a creative outlet. My mother knows I hated school. She knew ever since. Ask her sometime about my first day at kindergarten. Okay, it would never got any better either.
Pat, what was his first day at kindergarten like? He's pointing out a good question. What happened to Eddie when he went to kindergarten?
He did not want to stay. He cried. He wanted to leave. It wasn't for him, and he just did not like it. Did not want to stay. And all through school, I had trouble getting him to school. But I spoke with a teacher, and they said that Eddie is bored. He's very bright, but he's bored. I would take him to school. He'd go through the front door and come out the back door after I left. That's the truth.
Let me add to that. There was a Robin Williams skit that he did one time. He was talking about his son's first day at school, and he turned around and he looked back, and his son was plastered to the window in the classroom. That was me. I literally did that. Do you remember that? Like, oh, I was crying. The teacher Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
I could say this now; it's kind of embarrassing, but I really hated school. I hated it, and it wasn't all the kids liked me. It wasn't that I got along with the kids. I made some really good friends when I was in school. It was just I was immediately put off by the what do they call it, the sterile environment of it. It kind of always reminded me of being in a doctor's office, and it did, and it never got any better in that regard. It was institutional. It was I felt institutionalized at school, and I felt that the way that my brain thought, which is very creatively, my whole life. I mean, even before I got into heavy metal, I was into Star Wars, and and before that I was really into drawing. I used to love to draw all the time, and that segued into my when I get into Star Wars and stuff, I in, indulged in that creatively. Always was doing something creative. Now it immediately segued overnight. I literally went from drawings, pictures of Darth Vader, to listening to Iron Maiden within 24 hours. But I never stopped having the same creative feelings that way. And that's why she had such a hard time with me through grade school, middle school, and high school. And that's why she eventually said, you know what? This is what I think. That she just finally said, this kid, it's not for him.
A question that everyone is going to ask, and I have, is regarding Christianity. You present an alternative to Eddie, which at that moment in his life he's not going to buy, and is a form of Christianity, heavily involved with Satan and that. Do you maintain? Do you still have that feeling, that view of Christianity that you had back then, or has that changed?
It's just the words. It's power. Give the devil power. And it's nothing to do with God or anything like that. It was just praising the devil, giving him the glory. And I just don't care for that. It was all things that I didn't like.
Listening to the words and where he went from there. He went from the music and then he went on to something else that did not lead to good things. And there was a time that Eddie and I did not see each other for a few years. And I know why, is because he was into things that I did not approve of. I knew was going to be a problem for him once he got into the heavy metal. And I did listen to the music. I love music, but I can't really say that I care for. To me, it was screaming.
Terror, agitados, enormous, killing murders, further desire to set the fire, one life, take a life, give a life, kamikaze.
That's basically how that goes.
Eddie's got such a nice voice. I felt that he could have done different things with his voice, but I felt that it was just leading him down the wrong path. And I still feel that to this day with heavy metal, that it leads them down. It's interesting at first, it's exciting, and then it goes on to something else. And before you know it, you get yourself involved in stuff. And if everybody is honest with themselves and with other people, that is true, whether it's drugs, whether it's drinking, whatever it is. That's what I felt that heavy metal was going to do to my son. And sure enough, I was right. But I never, ever stopped praying for my son. I felt I knew my son, and I knew he was a good person, and I knew that he was going to be that person that I knew that he was meant to be.
I feel, and I felt, and I think many people feel, Eddie was a good person back then. There's no one who feels that at the time, his age, I think he was 16, the way he treated other people and the way he treated you touched many people. he was a good person. I assume he still is, but you never could feel the dark side of Eddie. I didn't.
I went to one of his singing band um concerts. I went to one and I saw my son and I said, he is just searching for something. And this is what he felt was going to make his life the way he wanted it. But he was totally different when he was in the concert, when he was singing. He was thrashing his hair around. He was, what he was doing, that was totally not Eddie. It was like somebody different to me.
So, Pat and Eddie, you two are behaving in a way that most of the country and most of the world, 90% of it at least, doesn't know, but I know because you're Mainers. There's a quality of decency that really touches me. I lived there 26 years and I loved Mainers. I loved the way your upbringing, the way you treat each other. There's a respect. And when I would walk into town as a 45-year-old man, a 16-year-old boy would walk past me and say, "Hello, sir," in Camden.
Mhm.
It was beautiful.
That's absolutely spot on. It's interesting that you bring that up because the fact of the matter is nowadays, and I was thinking of this a little while ago. Usually when I get out of work at night, I will go for a jog or I'll go for a long walk, and it takes me, the area. It's about a 4.5 or a 4 mile radius, and every time I would go down Main Street where there was a lot of people, I would remark to myself over the fact that from observing people, how you can't look someone in the eye usually in 2020. Whereas back in 1986, you could walk down the street and it was odd if you walked by a stranger and you didn't acknowledge them. If you were a man, you looked at the other man in the eye as you were passing him and you said hi, even if you never saw them in your life.
I actually do that when that's just the way I was brought up. That's what I'm used to. I will say hi to people. I don't know who they are, but I'll look at them and say hi like that. And lots of times they'll say hi back. Other times they won't. But that's my culture. That's the way like I said, that was the way that I grew up. I think that people should be friendly, respect. I don't know about that person. I don't know what they're going through. And most people they will reciprocate. They will say hi back. And sometimes they're very surprised.
So, guys, I want to thank you for doing this with me, and I want to think about it this way. We have the chance to actually do something that's real history, the history of the two of you, and to some small, teeny extent, the history of heavy metal. And I'm hoping that 34 years from now, I can do another one of these. So if you grant me permission, I'll be here 34 years from now, and I'll be able to do an interview
Okay.
because we're digital. So if there's not a real David Hoffman, there'll be a David Hoffman digital character asking Eddie, who will then be 80 some years old. And you and I will still be here, right, Pat?
That would be perfectly fine with me.
You, Ed?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there'd probably be, a clone of me, but
Yeah. I want to live a few years longer, don't you, David?
Absolutely.
we're going to get cut off.
Yeah.
This computer's going to cut
All
us
right.
off.